that he shivered. Chapter 1. Donovan. The officer sitting in the small waiting room had papers in his pocket that announced him as Captain Robert Donovan, 1st Battalion, the Connaught Rangers. It was close enough to the truth. He had returned from France that morning, landing at Dover at dawn and taking the train up to London. It had been a rough crossing, and he was glad to be back on dry land. He was less glad to have been ordered to report directly to the man he worked for, but, examining the young woman opposite him, decided there must be a purpose to his presence. And hers, most likely. She was attractive, with grey eyes, a long nose, and a firm, slightly pointed chin. Her complexion was pale and clear, and the occasional glance she cast his way seemed to indicate intelligence as well as annoyance. He supposed he was being rude, staring at her. It was hard, after France, to adjust to England and its conventions. After the trenches, the idea of politeness seemed more than a little absurd, but he supposed he'd have to make an effort. He looked down at the cigarette he had absent-mindedly lit a few moments before, observing the slight tremor in his fingers with equanimity. Lighting it had probably been a mistake. "Do you mind?" he said, as he exhaled a thin plume of smoke. He tried smiling, conscious of the unaccustomed strain it caused his cheek muscles. "Do I mind what?" Her voice was as he had expected. Educated, serious, definitely annoyed. "If I smoke?" "Shouldn't you have asked that question 10 minutes ago?" Donovan considered this. He looked at the low table between them and saw 2 butts in the ashtray. She might have a point. "Probably." There was a loud bang and a flash, which momentarily lit up the room. The window rattled. "Maroon," Donovan said when he saw her flinch. "I beg your pardon?" "A maroon." "And?" "It's a type of signal rocket, not a German bomb." "I didn't think it was." "A lot of people do." A couple of air raids and the city was in a state of outraged terror. Apparently bombing, gassing, and wholesale homicide had a time and place in a war. It was good to know there were rules, he supposed. "I'd introduce myself," he said, "but it's frowned on." He circled the cigarette in the air to indicate their surroundings. "Very hush-hush sort of a place." Her mouth pursed in irritation before she glanced towards the door, as though someone might be listening. Which they might well be. Then she lowered her head back down to the book she was reading. He glanced at the title. It wasn't the sort of book he'd have expected her to read, and he found he liked her all the better for it. "Any good?" She looked up, seemingly surprised he had spoken to her again. "The book," he said. "It's diverting," she said, and turned another page. "I see. Diverting." He blew 3 perfect smoke rings, which hung in the still air before curling in on themselves. 2 small red marks appeared on her perfectly pale cheeks. He wondered why she was there in the room with him. It was almost certainly intentional. He had sat here a number of times and had never seen anyone else except Miss Wilkins, the secretary to the man he'd been summoned by. That was the way it should be done, in his opinion. So, if she was meant to be here, then the question was why? She seemed a little young for this line of work, not much older than 23, although her earnestness might make her seem a little older. To judge from the long, straight blue dress and the neat jacket, she might well work in one of the Whitehall offices. But surely not this one. He allowed his eyes to take in the initialed brown leather briefcase that rested beside her chair. Perhaps she was seeking employment here. It was possible. He lit another cigarette and decided to probe. It would pass the time. "I wouldn't describe it as diverting myself." Her eyes had stopped moving along the lines, and her plump lower lip was now almost completely sucked in. "Kate plus 10. That's the book, isn't it? Edgar something, beginning with W." "Wallace," she said, looking up at him. There was some steel in her